You're listening to WNHHLP 103.5 FM, New Haven's home for community radio. I'm Mubarakah Ibrahim, and this is Mornings with Mubarakah, where we talk about national issues from a local level through a lens of diversity. We're broadcasting live from downtown New Haven, and we're streaming live on TuneIn Radio and NewHavenIndependent.org. We're also live on the New Haven Independent Facebook page and the Fit Muslimah Facebook page, and on Instagram and on Periscope. So even if you are moving around this morning, you have no reason to listen. You could just like click from one app to the next. You're like, oh, let me, I can't be on the radio now. Radio off, Facebook on, Facebook off, tune in on. There's no reason for you not to tune in to Mornings with Mubarakah on Wednesday mornings. So we actually have a beautiful weather day. I know people who don't live in Connecticut is like, why is she always telling us what the weather is like? But the weather affects my mood. So I have to make more effort on dreary days like we've had the last few days.
Definitely.
But today it's just like perfect. There's like low humidity. It's I think the rain yesterday kind of like just lifted everything up. So that is an excellent thing. So I love waking up in the morning. This is like one of my favorite times of the year too, because it's not like too hot. It's not too cold. I can diversify my wardrobe. Like some days you can wear sandals. Some days you can wear, all kind of fashion. It's a good fashion season. It's a good weather season. It's a good workout season.
Yes, definitely.
Because my favorite thing to do is actually to work out outdoors. So when it's nice outside, that is like such a huge plus for me. So besides the weather, we have an interesting show this morning. So I am excited because I have been kind of like stalking you since you came to New Haven. You don't know that.
Okay. All right.
I have been kind of stalking you, and I'm like, I got to get him on my show.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the stalking.
So we are talking this morning to Dr. Thomas Rashad Easley, who is the new Assistant Dean of Community and Inclusion at the Yale School of Forestry and Environmental Studies. He is from Birmingham, Alabama. Coming from a family that is rooted and engaged in civil rights movement, Easley employs confidence and empowerment in his pedagogy. That's a good word. He recently came to us from Raleigh, North Carolina, where he was a campus pastor, professor, and diversity director. Easley is also, and get this, people, he is also a hip-hop artist. And where he goes by the name Rashad Ease. In his music, he always integrates a message of care, love, accountability, and compassion. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
And I love that bio because it's kind of like I always find it so fascinating, partly because of the life I live, our intersectionality and how we can just overlap and be unexpected and untraditional. I had a really interesting Facebook conversation so what you may not know about me, because I'm sure you wasn't stalking me, is like I'm a Facebookaholic.
Okay.
So I refer to my Facebook conversations a lot and my Facebook friends a lot.
Okay. All right.
And so I put up a post that said well-behaved women rarely make history. And so, and so people were like, well, what does that mean? And what's well behaved? And I'm like, when you go against the status quo, it doesn't mean, going to do something. It doesn't necessarily mean doing something crazy or, immoral or illegal, but doing something that is not expected of you, that doesn't fit inside of kind of like these boxes that people want to put you in. And following what the status quo is. And so it varies per society, per community. And I would never have said we have forestry and hip hop put together.
I'm hearing a lot about that. Yeah.
So I'm happy I'm excited for this conversation. So I always like to start off with guests telling us a little bit about their background, because of course that's who makes us who we are.
Right.
So you are from Birmingham via North Carolina.
No.
Right?
I'm from Birmingham.
You're from Birmingham.
From Birmingham, born and raised.
All right, born and raised in Birmingham. Big family, small family?
Big family, not big immediate family, mom, dad, and myself and my sister, but a big family there in the whole state, really. Like, I mean, I'm born in Birmingham, but my family is in Huntsville. We're in Montgomery. We're in Decatur, and then we spread out to Atlanta, Georgia, and we're like in Augusta. Then we go all the way to the west coast of Los Angeles, California, and also Bay Area, and also up in New York. Like, so we're up here in like Harlem and stuff. So the Robinson family is like the at least my mom's side, because the Easley side we're big too, but that's mostly South Carolina, Tennessee, all the way down to Mississippi and into Texas. Both African American, or both Black, both also American Indian. On the Easley side, Choctaw tribe. On the Robinson side, or more on my grandfather's side, on my mom's side, that's going to be Seminole. And so we have that in our family. So I think that the whole civil rights part, me being part of that family, I think it's in the blood. You know, like we fight for equity, we fight for the rights of people. And
so, was it your parents who were involved in the civil rights movement?
Mostly my mom, but my dad meets my mom, and then he also, gets engaged and starts doing stuff too. So
women will make you better.
I totally agree with that. Yes. Yeah.
Awesome. And so, tell me a little. Let's talk a little bit about your upbringing. So you in your previous job, you were the campus pastor. So you had a religious upbringing?
I did have a religious upbringing in Birmingham, attending church mostly. My grandmother was Church of God in Christ, and my grandfather was Baptist, and so we grew up going back and forth. Like, so
Church of God, what denomination is?
So that would be Holiness, with the Church of God in Christ. So mostly, I probably think the best way to describe it is in some ways it's very restricted as far as what's in the church, and not restricted as how some people say that you worship. So you can express yourself, but you may not, at least when I was there, okay, you wouldn't see like a lot of instruments, but you would see drums, piano. You wouldn't see like a lot of, like, there wouldn't be like an electric guitar for the most part. So it would be like mostly things we could carry, tambourines and stuff. And but in the Baptist church, right, you would see all of that. Like, we would have, we would worship. We can get loud and move everywhere too, but you would have the organ and the piano and the guitar and the bass and the drum set. It's like, okay, it's a production here. You got the microphones, you had everything. So I would go to one and then walk around the corner to the other one. What was so interesting is that my family, period, chartered both churches. So the Robinson family chartered both the Church of God in Christ as well as the Hope World Church, because the Hope World Baptist Church was actually on our property.
Really?
And so the house my grandmother grew up in, we owned the property that the church was on, and it's a big church. It's still really big. It's like one of the biggest on that side of town. And then we also chartered Church of God in Christ. That was temple number 7 that we were at. So we had chartered probably about 4 different temples.
Okay, so you deeply religious family.
Deeply religious family.
I was born and raised Muslim, but my parents converted to Islam. So my grandparents are Christian. And it wasn't until my father's parents passed away that I got kind of like just a little taste of the difference between the denominations. So my grandmother, she was Protestant.
Okay.
And my grandfather was Baptist, and their funerals was like completely opposite. Different. My grandmother's funeral was very somber and subdued, and my grandfather's funeral was it was hilarious and jovial, and like the pastors, they like made jokes, and like we laughed halfway through his funeral.
Okay, yeah.
It was very, very different. So
okay.
That was a really interesting experience for me. I was like, so here's the differences.
Yes, definitely.
Really interesting.
Oh yeah.
So as you grew up in a religious family. When did you decide that was something that you wanted to do? Did becoming a campus pastor kind of like just...
No, it was really not something that I ever really wanted to do. Hopefully that doesn't sound hypocritical. No. In the sense of like, I didn't pursue becoming a pastor. I didn't pursue going deeper in the church as an adult. Like, I want to do that. As a child, I did. As a child, I did. But when my grandmother died, that everything changed. She died. It was like, because I was a literal Christian. I was a kid. Like, they didn't teach you why. anything.
Okay.
You just learn what.
Okay.
So when she died, and prayer didn't bring her back, and my tears didn't bring her back, I didn't believe in God anymore.
Oh.
So now my journey, now it's changing. That's when I started actually studying Islam, and then studying Hebrew Israelite, became a 5%er. That's when I just ventured out and did all kind of stuff.
Okay.
I became a member of a cult.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I did a number of things. I was actually like doing things like up here in New York with the Ansaru Allah community that was like founded by Michael York.
Really?
Yeah. So I was engaged.
I'm learning all of this stuff anew for my listeners. I'm like, oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. We didn't even talk about this before
Yeah,
in the pre-interview.
Some people say I lived like 20 lives. I'm like, yeah, sure. But I mean, I did a lot, especially during that time. So that's when me studying different religions and faiths and really learning, at least to me, like about God, the Almighty, Allah. Like it got bigger and broader, and God just became something that I couldn't grab hold of, but something that I just wanted to love more. When I finished when I went to graduate school, so you got undergrad, I was a trip in undergrad. Grad school is when I came back. I'll say I came back to Christianity.
Okay.
But at that point, when I say I came back, I was much more aware of who I am as an individual, and I was doing it for myself. So now it was like cracking the book open, almost just like reading it fresh. Even though I had read through it numerous times. And now I'm seeing different things. Now I'm like, oh my goodness, like I'm seeing the history in the book now. But that's also because I'm not a historian, but I try to study history. So now I can start to relate this to things that I'm learning about in history, the Roman Empire. I'm like, oh my goodness, I can relate this to like Judaism for real. Like, oh, wait a minute. And then I can start thinking about Ishmael and Isaac and how my family members don't just sit in Christianity, but they also sit in mosques as well. So now I'm like, wait a minute. So everything starts shifting for me. It's like, so then I started asking the questions. That's where my misbehaving started happening. And the more I asked questions, the deeper I got into it. And so really when I became a pastor at the church, it was after I had been ordained in the United Church of Christ. The United Church of Christ pours out of the UCC when they started being open, around GLBTQ and things. But I still continue growing and learning. I became a diversity professional. So then I started learning different things. I started traveling the world and I started seeing things. And the good thing is that it all happened at a time, I think, when I can kind of move it all in my mind and like really work with it. So I feel like my experience and my wisdom somewhat caught up with my age. Well, not the wisdom, but it caught up with my age, or my age caught up with my experience. And when it was time to become a pastor, it was like they were asking me to help them. Okay. I was like, you want me to help talk to the students? They said, sure. And then it evolved into becoming a pastor.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
So tell me, so you became a pastor, but you was also a diversity director. So this is really interesting because this word is also a part of your current title, diversity. So what does a diversity director or a person who helps increases the school, is that diversity inclusion or awareness? What does that type of person do?
It means too many things. Diversity itself is very ambiguous in the academy because the word itself only means difference. Like that's really all it means. But then the question is what difference? And then when we talk about in the academy, we're also talking about what do we value? So it's not just difference. It's okay, what's the added value or what do we value? And then how do we apply that in the workspace? So I went to NC State as the diversity director. I became a campus pastor. I really delved into the business of becoming a hip hop artist while there. But for me at NC State, it started as a diversity director. For them, it's codified in like three things. In most places, it's codified working in diversity. Increase people of color, or they say underrepresented minorities. That's a term that I don't use because there's nothing minor about us and we're not children. It's to and we include women in that, so they lump, everyone who's not there. And really in a way what they're saying is bring everybody here who's not a white male. That's really what they're saying. But the three groups in particular that they hone in on are African American, Latina, or Latino American, or Latinx or Latinx, and some still say Hispanic, but we don't really use that terminology anymore. And then or Native American, Native, right? Indigenous or American Indian or First Nations. So that's usually what they want. The next thing is we want to bring in more faculty of color. So we want to increase our student population. The second thing is we want to bring in more faculty. And then the third thing is usually we want to be this model that says we value and that we welcome diversity. But the problem is these institutions that are trying to do this were built in or on or as a monoculture, like a Yale University. So it's built for and by white men. So the structure itself, one of the reasons why Yale is going to struggle with this because it's trying too hard to get away from its origin. Like, to get to where they want to go, you really have to get away from the origin. You actually cannot look like you looked before. That's why I said it's difference. Diversity is difference. It doesn't mean look the same and maintain. So the struggle usually happens when they try to stay the same and then try to be different. That's why diversity usually doesn't work in most institutions, because they don't get, you can't look the same.
So what do you mean in what is it that, and not necessarily, we not just ragging on Yale, but in general,
because it's every school. It's not yet.
In general, what are the things that they try to hold on to that prevents the diversity from happening?
They try to hold on a limited definition of what scholarship or genius looks like. That's why they won't change how faculty become tenured for the most part, and that's in most institutions, because genius is actually common. It's not uncommon, but to ride my ego, I have to make it look like it's actually uncommon. You know, like Mubarakah can't understand what Thomas is teaching. But if Thomas is a great teacher, Mubarakah is a great learner. Yes, she can. And she's going to teach him too. Because that's what teaching is. That's what master's teachers understand. We grow. But that's also ministry. That's how ministry works. A pastor doesn't pastor or lead anyone that doesn't want to be pastor. Because you can't. He or she has to have the permission of he or she. Right. And we do it together. So they have to change. So they haven't changed that yet, like what scholarship actually means. But what's scary is it's already changing around the world. So I always tell people in institutions, catch up before it rolls you over. The other thing that is that they have to look at how they bring people in. So when you bring people in, it used to be so the original universities, if we will, like talking centuries and centuries and centuries ago, is we invite people who are like these special learners to this environment for us to create things that make our society or make the world better. That's not what we do now. Now universities are business. We invite people in, make sure you can pay that bill before you start those classes. We tell you what to do. So we kind of mold you into what we want you to become. Well, another challenge is millennials in particular, but all humans. You don't mold humans. You like raise humans. Like every human is a soul that wants to be heard. So when they come into this institution, if you're saying to be an engineer, you can only do 1, 2, 3. Like you said, the well-behaved person who is brilliant in engineering, they're going to be the one who's going to change that. Like they're going to come in and they're going to flip it. Well, institutions like the ones here and really around the world, they're not built to deal with that kind of genius. That's what I mean when I say they got to understand genius looks multiple ways. And chaos usually leads to innovation. So other things that people try to hold things in like order, so much is happening that you can't. I mean, look who's in the White House right now. So much is happening around us. I mean, shoot, I can pull up a tweet right now. I bet you there are going to be 5 things I can laugh at. Yeah. You know, so that's how fast things are moving. So with other things that in institutions, things move very slow, while things outside of the institution move very fast. But we look at the institution as where the brains and the genius is. So that's another challenge, right? So we have to also look at how we hire people. How do we retain people? And the reason I said the word monoculture, because a monoculture can't hire and retain multicultural people. It will stress out and fire multicultural people, but it can't maintain it because monoculture stays mono. Nobody is monotheistic. As Black people, we're not monotheistic. The academy isn't either. Scholarship isn't either. But they fight to try to maintain it, and that's why it's tough.
Wow. So if you're just tuning in, we are talking to Dr. Thomas Easley, who is the Assistant Dean of, it's a long title, so I have to look at it every time, who is the Assistant Dean of Community and Inclusion at the Yale School of Forestry and Environmental Studies. He is also a hip hop artist, and he is joined us in New Haven via North Carolina. And in your role as diversity, so in your role in helping universities with their diversity, what are some of the kind of like the biggest aha moments that you've had?
Here's one. Okay. I asked my colleagues yesterday, I said, have you ever noticed that most people who are in faculty positions don't know what it's like to be a staff member? I said, and have you ever noticed that most people who are staff members don't know what it's like to be a faculty member? Anyway, I said, that's very important, because what I'm saying is you have people who don't understand the experiences of others making decisions that impact other people. So here again, most people empowered in most institutions were like faculty members. They were probably tenured faculty. This is one of the reasons why tenured faculty members become the target of so many hits, like a school like Yale, because when you walk in power, but you are unaware of how much power you actually have or the impact that you can have, you make decisions, and that they're not necessarily intelligent decisions. It's just because you're in power and you look as what we think is intelligent, but it's probably a stupid decision because you didn't consult or you haven't talked to people. So what you have is you have people in both positions like faculty and staff. A lot of times they'll be arguing with each other and won't see eye to eye, but that's also because they've never been in one another's seat. Staff don't know what faculty have to deal with hour to hour, and they have to deal with a lot when it comes to raising your own money if you need to, teaching students who probably are not as mature as they need to be, writing papers, writing work. And then that's before we bring in the isms. Like that's before we deal like a woman that's a faculty member dealing with sexism. That's before we even have to deal with that. It's just the nature of the job. A faculty member usually doesn't understand what a staff member has to deal with. Staff members have to be at work at a certain time all day. Staff members don't get sabbaticals. Faculty do. Staff members have to work all the time, so they have to take vacation while faculty members get it. So you see how a staff member will look at a faculty member and go, "Pansy, look at you. You punk, you're doing this." And then the faculty member look at a staff member, probably say, "You're not smart enough to be in this. You don't understand what I'm dealing with." But the crazy part is both of them are incompetent. They're just incompetent in different ways. They don't know what the other person is doing. Now, why can I speak like that with confidence? Because I knew what it was like to be on both sides. Like, that's what happened when I played a role in all sides. And I looked back and was like, oh, man, wait a minute. Oh, they don't really know what faculty have to struggle with every day. They have no idea. But then the faculty member, I'm like, you don't really understand the disrespect a staff member deals with every day. Even coming in and seeing the benefits and the advantages that you have that you didn't necessarily earn.
Wow.
So that's one of my aha moments.
So I in my mind, I have this visual Venn diagram. So how does your work in diversity intersect with your work in forestry and environment?
So as I mentioned, remember how I said at NC State I was the diversity director? So I'll say this, I've always been a hip hop artist since I was a youth, since I was a young person, like high school. So it starts from me there with hip hop. I think that hip hop requires discipline if you really want to be a great artist. If you want to be a great rapper, freestyling, okay, is very important. If you want to make good music, you have to pay attention to the audience that you're reaching to. And if you want to learn how to expose yourself, then you have to learn something about business and networking, all of that. Okay, so that's just hip hop, right? Now think about something. When we talk, like if you look at a YouTube video or Facebook Live, do they talk about hip hop that way? No. Where's the show?
To be honestly, when I think of, if I think of just the surface of hip hop, you think of actually the opposite of hip hop artists. That they're wild, they're unruly, they're undisciplined, they do drugs and they party, and they like, you really do just think of the opposite of what you see.
And it's true because that's what that's part of the image. But most hip hop individuals don't even talk about it like that, right? You know, so all I'm doing is I'm just adding more evidence to what makes hip hop artists great. Okay, now in academia, so now in forestry, we learn how to cultivate the land for the purposes of providing products, for the purposes of providing habitat, for the purposes of making life hopefully better for people who understand where the resources come from. But forestry, we also stabilize water with tree roots and soil. We create habitat for wildlife. We understand the connection between insects or predators, insects, as well as deer, and then before we get to humankind, if you will. So you learn the ecology, you learn the interaction between humans as well as the environment. Well, in hip hop, what usually do we talk about? Ourselves and our environment. So when we're as a rapper, as a person who puts lyrics together, I'm just telling you about my experience. So when I started doing forestry and I started studying forestry, that's how I passed my classes. I would write my notes in songs. Like,
really?
That's how I passed chemistry. Like, okay, I would put combinations, put it to rhythms. So when I would take tests, that's how I would take tests, listening sometimes to songs. I would let my professor listen. I would like, here you go. So they know I'm not listening to notes. I'm like, I'm listening to the alcoholics. As I'm writing about alcohols. So now just hit the part, then just fast forward. Being a professor too, when I was at NC State, bringing hip hop into the classroom, what I saw was the light that went off in young people's eyes when they heard bars on top of vocation or heard bars on top of education. And then I just put it together and said, whoa, wait a minute. We could talk to youth and other people if we speak multiple languages. And one way to start is by hip hop. And so I decided to like merge them together. But I merged it together.
So looking at hip hop itself as a language.
That's it. It could be a curriculum. It could be a way of thinking. But I just put it together to have fun. I didn't know people were going to jump on it. I had no idea. I was like, just going to make a song with hip hop forestry. And then people heard it and then were like, can we talk more about that? And I'm like,
really?
oh, okay. Sure. I got to put this together now, you know. I got to come up with something.
Like, that was only 10 verses. Let me make some more.
Mission, vision, goals.
So you started to actually merge your hip hop and your forestry in grad school?
No, actually I didn't. I didn't start merging hip hop and forestry until last year. In all honesty, it was last year. I merged hip hop and my scholarship. I started that in grad school and continued that on while I was at North Carolina State and finishing my doctorate and stuff. But the hip hop and forestry, I put it like this: if I didn't merge hip hop with forestry, it's possible I may have left the field of forestry.
Really?
It's possible. Because when working in diversity and forestry, all honesty, as a diversity professional, you get tired of trying to convince people to go into a field or to look at a field that they actually, truthfully, wouldn't look at otherwise. It just gets exhausting, you know, and you're trying to do this and work with other people who are in the discipline who don't even know how to reach out to the folks you're trying to attract anyway. So I said, you know, if I don't make something work, this is hindsight 2020 now. But when I did it, I was just like doing something, because a lot of times I write songs to just keep my sanity. So I'm like, I'm going to write and just try to do something. When I wrote it and I look back at the hip hop forestry song, I went, wow, that's a lot. Like, I feel like I put a lot into it. And then when I recorded it, the people who were in the studio, when they heard it, they were all like, that's kind of deep. Because no one had really thought about forestry in the hip hop community.
And this is the song that we're going to play today.
And we'll be playing that later.
Awesome. Yes. So tell me, when you put together a song and a song like this, how do you decide that this is the song I'm going to record as opposed to what's going to stay in the book?
Sometimes I write to record it. I'm like, I want to record this song, so I'm going to put it together.
All right.
But to answer the way that you formed that question is, if I read it and I listen to it, or I read it to myself and go, like, if it's a song that I know I didn't come up with in the sense of I couldn't have put this together on my own, this is why I love God. Like, I didn't just do this on my own. The fact that I'm speaking to multiple experiences, the fact that even I'm learning, reading myself, I'm like, wow, okay. Then that's when I go, I need to put this on a song. I need to put this somewhere. And I also want to do it because really I make my songs for me. I'm just thankful that people like them. I usually make my music for me.
And so the title of the song that we're going to play now is called
Hip Hop Forestry.
Hip Hop Forestry. So we are going to, and I want you guys, if you're listening, listen to the lyrics of the song, because we're going to have a discussion about it. We're still here.
Professor Frizz, the doc is in. This hip-hop forestry and poetry is getting late. This poetry, this academic superstar gonna plant a seed and grow a tree in my front yard, locally, on my block, hopefully, make others do it globally. Not fresh air, hopefully. I'm thankful for oxygen, a tree hugging out again. But trees my family, you see I lost a lot of friends. Humans are greedy, mistaken it for hungry. Like a racist really hates me for diversity, they want me. See you little devil, look around me with filthy feathers. Don't like all you dirty birds, you ain't no falcon. Be my pleasure. The skeet shoot, now ski, get you away from me. You're not worth my unwanted see, but I know what you want from me. My body you sexualize, my mind you criticize, my existence you idolize. Treat the world like it's itemized. We taking harvest with no limits, and I call it godless. And still gotta deal with racist foolishness in my office. Let me back up off that. Teach a new subject off rap. This my sis blueprint, drugs and hoods to girls, yeah, we off that. With all disrespect, this ain't about loving cops or being soft. Not saying go to college, but I'm saying something's off. What's that? Obesity, diabetes, less ceilings. To me, the victim don't care about colonizers' feelings. From Wakanda to Rwanda, T'Challa to Killmonger, vibranium, oozing my cranium, death before dishonor. That vernacular may not coalesce in all environments, but I knew I'd make history before my dad's retirement. But when you make history, you don't always have your fans. That's a sign that you're teaching them something they don't understand. I don't light up for applause. I'm solid as heavy metal. Eat delicacies, but I'm not delicate as flower petals. I'm a regenerated sand, a remediated metal. Lyrics that control fire, reducing hazardous espresso. This hip-hop forestry plus poetry is getting late, let's poetry. This academic superstar gon' plant and seed and grow it. Hip-hop forestry plus poetry is getting late, let's poetry. This academic superstar gon' plant and seed and grow it.
So that is half. Well, we didn't play the whole song, but If they want the song, you're on iTunes?
I'm on iTunes. I'm on SoundCloud. The song, actually, you're the first person to hear it live. The song
Debut,
will be released on September 29th.
That. That's right. We debut Forestry Hip Hop here on Mornings with Mubarakah. What?
Thank you you're the first station in person to actually hear it.
So when is the release?
It'll be released on September 29th.
Okay, so it's going to be released on September 29th. But you do have iTunes.
I do. I'm on iTunes. I'm on Spotify. I'm everywhere you can usually find music online.
Okay.
Amazon.
Rashad East.
Rashad East. Exactly.
Okay, and we'll also share it on our social media.
Thank you.
So in this song, you actually talked about. So when I had a chance to listen to the song, it certainly is exactly how you described. It really touched on a lot of different things, from environmental justice to policy to diversity. You talked about a lot of stuff. And I had to listen to it a couple of times. I was like, yeah, okay, all right, wow, really?
The problem of being an academic, we talk too much. I can tell you that we do talk too much.
So you actually even touched on like even policy kind of stuff, like how policy and environment affects people, and of course in my health and fitness ears, I hear the food and obesity.
Yes,
You talked about. So what is it that inspired you to write this particular song? Do you have an inspiration, kind of like aha moment that, okay, I need to talk about this?
First is there were things that I was going through in my previous position, not to down and even make it negative, because I won't, but some of what I'm talking about is like my experience. Like, I'm speaking as a Black man working in a historic white institution. We don't say predominant because no one's dominant over us, but we do say historic. Because if we're gonna be historical, then what are they? All right, so here I am going through things, but then I'm working in diversity, right? And I'm watching other people go through things. Now I'm also in a position to change some of it. So I'm not just complaining, if you will, or not just saying. I'm also looking at, okay, I'm doing this. What's happening over here? That's why when you get to the second and third verses, you'll start to hear that when I start breaking down what hip hop forestry is, and I'm like like I mentioned, you can't own what you didn't create. We have this all wrong, the way that we're managing our resources, dealing with domination. Then I looked at what was going on with other people too, and that is really what fueled the rest of the song, was the work that I was doing with youth in Southeast Raleigh. I was doing some work with we have an interfaith center there in Cary, North Carolina. So I'm doing work with people who are Muslim as well as Jewish, and we're seeing what we're fighting, especially when we deal with not organized crime, but I just say the organized criminal justice system. So we're dealing with that. And then at the same time, when I write this, the other thing that was big at the moment was Black Panther. Like that was such a big movement. That's why I say from to Rwanda to T'Challa to Killmonger, and I said I don't have a feeling for, like, I'm not scared of colonizers' feelings. I don't care about your fragility right now. I don't care if you feel sad. You are a part of the problem. You see, so I'm like, vibranium oozes from my cranium, death before the sun. Meaning I'm not going to fall on my knees before standing as a man. But then I say, but that vernacular may not coalesce in all environments. But I knew I'd make history before my dad's retirement. Meaning if I walk into like where I work and I say something like that, like, like they make or, maybe like, well, what is that? So I'm saying is that you also don't understand my language either. So I'm speaking multiple languages. So that's the other reason why hip hop is so important, because that's what we do. We speak the languages of wherever we came from and wherever we go. Forestry, I think that we deal with managing the land wherever we go. If we really care, if it's more about the environment. So that's why I say hip hop changed the landscapes of sound. Forestry changed the landscape. So that was that. And then after that, as a scientist, I just put what I know as a scientist into the song, and what I know as an activist into the song, and what I know as a minister into the song.
And do you feel like your art is a part of your activism?
It is.
It is.
It is. The art, the education, even, like what I did doing ministry, because I'm not like practicing ministry now. Like I'm not leading a church or working with a group of people. But for me, everything comes together. I preach about the same thing that I rap about. I rap about the same thing that I teach about. I teach about the same thing that I advocate for. So I'm not going to push equity if I'm not out here fighting for it. And that's why in the songs, when you listen to it, you can hear so many, you can hear the details. Like it's kind of like my favorite MC right now is Sci-Hi the Prince. I like him. That brother raps. He raps.
Yeah.
What got lyrics? I listen to the way he talks about drug dealing. There's a reason his lyrics are so intricate, because I'm like, well, he talking about what he's done. I listen to him like
you done told on yourself.
Thanks, bro. Yeah, thanks for telling me. You might want to quiet some of that down, but okay. All right. Listen to Jay-Z and Beyonce. I'm like, babe, I don't really need to know all the details of Becky with the good hair. Like, I really don't need to know all that. But but thank you, But they do that because they live through it. It's the same thing with hip hop forestry. What if authors did that in hip hop? Because authors already do it in writing, like Alice Walker. She's outstanding. Zora Neale Hurston did it. James Baldwin did it. I'm just doing what they did in hip hop. I'm trying to do, I should say. I can't touch what they did. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about this kind of your journey into actually becoming a hip hop artist versus someone who's just writing down lyrics as a form of diary or expression, or like when do you think that you mentally made that transition and say, you know what, I'm going to actually, put this out for people to listen to and for people to, and I'm going to monetize it. That's also important.
Sure, yes.
So when did you make that transition mentally and physically?
2008 is when I made the transition to even consider hip hop, because that's when I started. I saw how it worked with my students. I saw how when you brought hip hop into the classroom, and I would do it carefully, but when you let people know that you can help them with their artistry, it's just funny to watch what the students do. It's like they come alive. Maybe when they were in high school, somebody told them that they weren't an artist, because as a child, I know that they were told that they were, but it gets worked out of them. So I saw it and I went, hey, why not make a song or two? So me and a couple of students made songs. One of those students is B, who's on that record right there. And he's family. So that was 2008. In 2011, after I had put out a video, was in a group, I went, I'm just going to put out a CD. But I tell you why. I was a Sunday school teacher. And when I would talk to the kids, I would always really work with youth. I noticed that when I told the youth about my life, not only did they go, okay, but I could see that the wisdom side of their brain or their spirit was starting to kick in. A wise person learns from others' mistakes. I don't want you to do what I'm doing, or I don't want you to do what I've done. So I can see them and they ask questions. And a lot of my students who took my classes, they're graduated out of college, didn't do a lot of the things, but it's because I feel like part of it is their brilliance. They made their decision. Let me not take away from them, but I told them, I'm like, this is how I messed up. This is how I got kicked out of school. This is how. So then that's why my first album in 2011, when I released it, is called Transitions. I said, I'm going to give you all an album where you can listen to some of my immaturity. You also can hear and you can also hear my growth. So that's the one album that I have that most people don't even know about. It's the first one. But when I put it out, there is language on that record. The first half of it is, this is immature Rashad. This is the Rashad that thought he was going to die before he was 18 years old. I'm like giving it to you. Here, I want you to know how I rapped, how I valued. I was always scared of women, so I've always highly valued women, but the words that I use. I want you to hear my language. Then when I, skip all the way through, and then I got, I'll say I got saved. But I say you could say saved, enlightened, really made a choice to change my life. The rest of the album is different. The rest of the album is, okay, it's all clean. And then I just decided after that, I just kind of, from here on, I kind of rap without cursing. I just kind of just dug it. I just like that, wow, I can rap and use a lot of words without cursing. I'm like, well, Tribe Called Quest did that. I respected them. At times, my favorite MCs do that. And then in 2015, when I really brought like a whole cadre of people into the studio and we started making music and they started doing their own thing, I said, okay, we've done something. We have built something that can continue to grow. This is an institution. It's not just me anymore.
And do you do shows, performances?
Back in North Carolina, I do. Like, I'm going to be performing next week when I'm back home. I'm still growing around here and connecting with people here in the Connecticut or New Haven, Connecticut area. But I do back home in Alabama, at times South Carolina, and like Atlanta. Like, that's mostly where my fan base is and where I can like do things regularly.
Okay, well, like we were talking before the show, there's lots of little silos of communities here. Now everybody know you got another hip hop artist to bring in the fold.
Please, that's a request from me too.
Absolutely. So we have about 5 more minutes of the show.
Okay.
I definitely want to remind people. So for people who listen every week, last week we talked to Dr. Marion Evans, and she gave raving reviews about you and talked about an event that you'll be speaking at. You'll be a keynote at this Friday. So today's Wednesday, day after tomorrow. It is hosted by the Greater New Haven Green Fund, and the title is Outreach and Inclusiveness, Filling the Gaps Through the Environmental Movement. And Dr. Thomas Rashad Easley is the presenter for this event. When you, and it's at 5:30. I just want to make sure I tell people. So September 21st, 5:30 p.m. at the Whitneyville Cultural Commons, 1253 Whitney Avenue in Hamden, Connecticut. It's free and it's open to the public. You can find it on our Facebook page. You can actually Google it on Eventbrite. I was looking forward to this. Now I'm looking forward to it even more. You have been a pleasure to talk to.
Thank you.
Really have been a pleasure to talk to you. I definitely have to have you back on. So before you go, tell our audience how they can follow you, look you up. Where can they keep in contact with you?
Thank you. So on Twitter and on Instagram, you can find me at Rashad Ease, RASHADEAS. Facebook, Thomas Easley, Rashad Easley. You can email me at info@easleybranch.com. So if you want to reach out to me there, if I can just tell, if you ever want to listen to the music, you can look up Rashad Transitions, Southern Black Gentleman, A Conversation with Polly Murray. You'll find that under Rashad. It was the Professor Prismatic, the Chronicles of Professor Prismatic. When I realized that I was competing with other Rashads, even Isaiah Rashad on TDE, I went, I got to change that. So now Rashad Ease, but that's my highest grossing record right there.
Awesome.
Chronicles of Professor Prismatic. You see it?
There you go.
Comic book. We're actually releasing a comic book with that label.
Awesome. So do you draw too?
I don't draw, but I work with artists that do. But I do write.
Oh, okay.
I do write stories.
Okay, awesome.
And you have a comment from Aaron Good. Thanks for this program. Looking forward to hearing Dr. Easley speak this Friday at the Greater New Haven Green Fund event.
Awesome.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you, Aaron.
Appreciate that.
All right. Thank everybody. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for listening in. You've been listening to Mornings with Mubarakah on WNHHLP 103.5 FM. And I want to remind you today, as I remind you every week, go about your week and be a voice and not an echo.